The 2022 Indianapolis 500 will likely feature the largest entry list in over a decade, since 2011, when over 40 cars were entered. In this video, we will explore all 42 possible entries for the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. But first, this video is brought to you today by HelloFresh. You guys already know why HelloFresh is America's #1 food delivery kit. You get delicious meals that are fun to make, correctly proportioned as to not waste food, and sustainable. Nearly all of the packaging used to ship your food is made from recycled material. You guys know I love the HelloFresh meals because not only are they extremely tasty, but they are also fast. I can have a meal ready in just about 30 minutes. HelloFresh makes it so easy with their pre-portioned ingredients, which means less prep work and less wasted food afterwards. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code LAND14 to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com and use the code in the description, LAND14, to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. So as we stand right now at the end of October, we have 22 confirmed entries, 8 expected, and 12 unconfirmed. And those entries will be marked as such throughout this video. There are 42 possible entries, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but it should be noted that I don't think all will materialize. Of course, it never ends up being that way. Honda is tapped out at 18 engines. As I'm told, they will not supply any more engines. They are tapped out. All the engines are spoken for from the Honda side of things, and that means that any field expansion for this year's Indianapolis 500 will come from the Chevy side of things. My thought is that the final entry list for the Indianapolis 500 in May of next year will be around 36 to 38 cars, with a possible as many as 40, but I think that would be the absolute max number you will see for the Indianapolis 500. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, Team Penske entered essentially 5 cars last year, including the PARETTA Autosport satellite team. They have cut back to 3 full-time cars for 2022, those being Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, and Will Power. Those 3 are confirmed. Lock them in. They will be attempting to qualify for the Indianapolis 500. Now, there is some speculation, which is backed by a couple of statements by Roger Penske and Kyle Larson himself, and it was, of course, Robin Miller, the great journalist's last dying wish that Kyle Larson drive a Team Penske car in the Indianapolis 500. So I will add this as a possibility, and I do believe there is a possibility of an extra Penske car for the Indianapolis 500. But I think we'll have a much clearer picture of whether or not Larson is 100% actually interested in running the Indianapolis 500 in the next couple of weeks, depending, of course, on how we see whether or not he wins the NASCAR championship or not. It would be a great thing for the 500 and for the sport if it does end up happening. AJ Foyt Racing. Absolutely none of the drivers here are confirmed, though Foyt did enter 4 cars last year. 3 of them made the race. We're expecting that Dalton Kellett and Sebastian Bourdais will be back in some form or another next year, Kellett being full-time, and Bourdais likely splitting the seat with Tatiana Calderon, though I would imagine that they would take experience over Calderon at the 500, and why wouldn't you? Again, Foyt entered 2 extra cars last year, and for the purposes of this video, we will expect them to enter at least 1 extra car. They are hiring personnel to do one. That may end up being a full-time car next year. So Foyt could be as many as 4 cars. Aero McLaren SP. Now, 2 of these drivers you're well aware of at this point. Pato O'Ward, who has had 2 fantastic Indianapolis 500s in his short career, and Felix Rosenqvist. But the 3rd car has been quite a bit of a question mark, and I have had it reiterated to me in the last couple of days that Kyle Kirkwood would be the front runner for this car at least at some point next year, and I assume because of the fact that he's the Indy Lights champion, and also because of the fact that there are no Honda engine leases left, and therefore Andretti Autosport really doesn't have a place for him in 2022, that he would be farmed out, and it sounds like the team that he would be farmed out to would be Aero McLaren SP. So as of right now, The top three, or the three drivers you would see at Arrow McLaren SP for next year at the 500 would be Award, Rosenquist, and Kirkwood. Chip Ganassi Racing. Now, all five of these drivers we should pretty much rely on happening, though there is one question mark, and we'll get to it when we get there. Marcus Ericsson, Scott Dixon, the pole sitter from last year, Alex Palou, the guy who very nearly won the race and probably has a couple of wins in his career still to go, Tony Kanaan, and, of course, Jimmy the Juggernaut Johnson. Now, Jimmy is currently unconfirmed. That is a formality as far as I am aware. I think everybody expects that Jimmy will run the 500 next year, and as far as I am aware, the deal is very, very close to being done. So expect Jimmy Johnson at a fifth Chip Ganassi car for next year's race. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. This is another easy team because all the seats are confirmed and spoken for. Graham Rahal, of course, returns to his family team. Christian Lundgaard will take over for Takuma Sato in the number 30, and Jack Harvey will be the third full-time driver in the number 45. That is, of course, the Hy-Vee entry, and I can definitely tell you that Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan is very high on Jack Harvey, and we're going to have to see how that works out throughout the season as well as the 500. Paretta Autosport. Now, it's very unclear exactly what form, if any, this team will take in 2022. Of course, they partnered with Team Penske last year, and to my understanding, that isn't necessarily on the table, at least with Penske, again. So I know that Paretta has been shopping her deal around to other teams. They don't, as far as I am aware, own any of their equipment. Of course, they leased it all from JUNCOS Racing last year, so they would have to partner with another team to actually make an attempt at the Indianapolis 500. And with the amount of drivers and teams, we'll have to just see where, if anywhere, Paretta and Simona Di Silvestro could slot in. Dale Coyne Racing. Traditionally, nothing is confirmed there for quite a while, and guess what? No drivers confirmed as of right now. But we've got some pretty educated guesses of who's going to be there, at least in two of the three cars. Dave Malukas, who tested very well at Barber Motorsports Park, and by the way, he's from Illinois, not Ohio, I should say that. Got the backing of HMD Trucking behind him. Of course, that's his dad's company, but again, don't be fooled by that. Guy's fast, and looks like he will be with Dale Coyne full-time next year. He will be partnered with a very experienced teammate. Takuma Sato appears to be making the move into the Romain Grosjean car of last year, and certainly, as a two-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, I think Sato will bring an element to Dale Coyne Racing that they haven't had for a couple of years, and that is a real, true, strong team leader on the oval track side of things. So I would expect this team to be pretty good. The to be announced in the third car is anyone's guess at this point, but I would imagine that Dale Coyne Racing's third car will be one of the hottest potential landing spots for anyone looking to get into the Indianapolis 500, whether that's a driver or whether that's a team or sponsor partner that doesn't own any of their own equipment. Ed Carpenter Racing. This team is always very fast at the Indianapolis 500, and if what we believe to be true is happening, this will be a team to watch going into 2022. Ed Carpenter, as we know, very, very blistering fast at the Indianapolis 500. Rinus VeeKay was on the front row last year, and it looks like Connor Daly, who led the most laps in last year's Indianapolis 500, will be replaced by 2014 Indianapolis 500 winner Ryan Hunter-Reay. Though that has not been confirmed yet, Hunter-Reay was testing with the team at Barber Motorsports Park, and as I understand it, that deal is very, very close to being done. And Hunter-Reay in an Ed Carpenter Racing car, that I think is a very sneaky and potent combination. Dreyer and Reinbold Racing is one of the best Indy-only teams. In fact, I would probably say they are the best Indy-only team. Sage Karam, while not confirmed yet, and I do know that he is looking at a full-time season in stock cars next year, you'd almost be crazy to break up this driver-team pairing, especially after a great top 10 from the back row in last year's race. There's always a possibility of a second car at Dreyer and Reinbold. I would actually think that Dreyer and Reinbold would be a prime candidate for a team that doesn't have any equipment but has a lot of money to to come in and place a driver and have a good teammate in Sage Karam and a good basis of which to build a team. So we'll have to see if there's 2 cars from Dreyer and Reinbold. I know they cut back to 1 last year, and it was successful for them. So this is one that I would question whether they will have 2 cars, but I think it's always a possibility at the same time. Andretti Autosport, always one of the more competitive teams at the Indianapolis 500. I believe pretty solidly that they are going to be locked in at 5 cars versus their traditional 6. But again, subject to change. I guess we'll just say that. Colton Herta, Alexander Rossi, Romain Grosjean, who will be making his rookie Indianapolis 500 start, Devlin DeFrancesco, who is currently unconfirmed, but I think most people expect that he is going to be at the Andretti Autosport team, and Marco Andretti, who's another one who is unconfirmed as of right now, but I would expect him to be back in Andretti Autosport at the Indianapolis 500 once again. The Giant Killers are back, and that's JUNCOS Hollinger Racing after a year off, though their car did not take a year off. It was with Paretta Autosport in the hands of Simona Di Silvestro, doing bump day things once again. Callum Ilott will be the lone representative, at least at this point, from this team. And the reason I say that is because, as reported by Racer.com and Marshall Pruitt, there's a possibility that JUNCOS could acquire the assets of CARLIN Racing and go to 2 cars for next year. But as of right now, we're going to keep JUNCOS Hollinger at 1 car, and we are going to put CARLIN Racing at 2 cars. The reason we're doing that right now is because, A, there's a lot of possibilities for CARLIN. There's a lot of suitors potentially going to buy the assets of that team. But at the same time, CARLIN Racing could continue. But if they do continue, Max Chilton demands a teammate. Therefore, I have 2 cars on the CARLIN Racing possibility list. And it's anyone's guess who could be the second CARLIN Racing car if CARLIN Racing continues as CARLIN Racing. Does that make any sense? I've heard some names such as Connor Daly thrown out there. I've also heard, I think it's been in the media actually, that one of the drivers from F2, Dan Ticktum, could be in that seat for next year. So we're going to have to see what happens with CARLIN Racing. This is one of the great question marks left in IndyCar silly season. Defending winners of the Indianapolis 500, Meyer-Shank Racing, lock them in at 2 cars, and it's a very strong driver lineup. Simon Pagenaud and Elio Castroneves. Pagenaud looking for his 2nd Indianapolis 500 and finished 3rd in the race last year, and Elio Castroneves, the winner for Meyer-Shank Racing last year. This is an extremely strong team. Extremely, extremely strong for the Indianapolis 500. Yeah, watch that space. Top Gun Racing. R.C. Anderson expected back next year. The underdog story, which captured a lot of attention last year, rightfully so. They actually did run another race at the Brickyard 400 weekend, and they are expecting to be back with an entry next year. And I actually got to speak to R.C. Anderson yesterday. So here's a little bit of that interview talking about next year's possibilities.
But as far as next year for us, the main goal is to go to 500 again. We want that redemption, of course. I think everybody wants to see us have that redemption. And then whatever else we can get as far as races go is just going to be a blessing. So.
MAROTTI Autosport. Now this is another small Indiana-based team which is attempting to stage an entry for the Indianapolis 500. They have a program called the Spirit of the Speedway where folks or sponsors will be able to buy a small part of the car and potentially essentially have a stake in the car so they could earn winnings, or you could have payback from winnings from the car. It's an interesting program. We're going to have to see how it works out. But MAROTTI has been able to bring cars to the Indianapolis 500, at least fun cars before. He was able to fund a couple of the Oriole Servia attempts with Sam Schmidt Motorsports. So I wouldn't completely count them out as an entry, but I would say that I think if this team does come, they will be partnering with an existing team. Team Trackhouse. Yes, indeed. The NASCAR stalwart has announced, I guess, an intention to run at some point. Justin Marks mentioned in an interview, I think back in June, that the team had been looking at possibilities. While I have no specific information of what team they could be looking at, I think a natural fit would be possibly Team Trackhouse maybe partnering with Chip Ganassi Racing on one of their extra cars to not only help with funding but also help with crew personnel. We'll have to see. This is one that's kind of a question mark because we really haven't heard much since the summer about a possibility of a Trackhouse Indy 500 entry. And again, with as subscribed as this Indy 500 field seems to be, you'd almost have to expect that this would be a partner team if it does end up happening. And finally, a team that just recently confirmed their intentions to run the Indianapolis 500 is CUSICK Motorsports, returning with Stefan Wilson once again. Now, they partnered with Andretti Autosport last year, and they announced that they will be and have a primary sponsor for this year's Indianapolis 500, or 2022's Indianapolis 500, I should say. So they will be back with Stefan Wilson, but we don't know exactly what form that team will take, whether they will strike out on their own, whether they will partner with someone else. We will have to wait and see, but expect CUSICK Motorsports and Stefan Wilson. So there were some question marks, some TBAs on that list, and here is the free agent driver market that if you are looking to enter a car at the Indianapolis 500 and you don't have a driver yet, hey, maybe you could get 2016 pole sitter James Hinchcliffe, maybe the driver who led the most laps in the Indianapolis 500 last year, Connor Daly, maybe two-time winner Juan Pablo Montoya. How about Santino Ferrucci, who's ran 3 Indy 500s and never had anything less than a top 10 finish? So if you look at that list right there, you got some great drivers, and let me know down in the comments who you think out of that list may end up on our list of confirmed drivers for the 500 later on down the line. So we're already thinking about the Indy 500 before Halloween. That's pretty cool, eh? So yes, if you enjoyed this video, expect more Indy 500 content coming. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to HelloFresh. Go buy you some HelloFresh. Get you 14 free meals, and we'll see you in the next video.